Rob, you're an empathy activist, so I can feel you're a fellow soulmate. Tell me, what makes you optimistic? Is it nature or nurture?
I think it is nature to start. I think there is something in myself that just naturally is gravitating that way. But perhaps some nurturing happened along the way as I was growing up that also then just got me to look for the positives and look on the bright side. Because when does personality kind of form? And I think, you know, I'm in the Enneagram world, for people that follow that, I am a hardcore Enneagram 7, which is that adventurer and, always looking for new experiences. And I talk about this with my therapist all the time, like when something will come up and I'll be like, yeah, that happened and I was upset about it. And then I just kind of pushed through or, got my way out of it. He's like, that's just your 7. Is, we can speak in a little more shorthand. He's like, yeah, that's you being a 7, not wanting to dwell on negative experiences and just kind of moving on to the next thing. And it served me well. I mean, I think I was always positive and optimistic when I was young. And then, in my book, I write about what I went through growing up in Indiana and bullied and teased by my classmates. And that was really hard. And I was contemplating suicide at certain points. But I guess I can say I chose not to do that. I was able to pull myself out of that. But the thing that actually, and I write about this, the thing that I held on to was the fact that I knew I'd be able to leave. I just had to wait long enough. And when you're 12, going to 18 and graduating high school and being able to leave to go to college, that's a lot of years. It's like half of your life at that point. But I don't know, somehow I made it. And I think it was that optimism towards a better sort of future that I just had to hold on to.
It's interesting because I've recently written an essay in praise of Pollyanna. And the more you read, both the novel, watch the film, and think about it. In fact, the thinking isn't all that different from the German psychotherapist Victor Frankl. A man's search for meaning, and that tragic optimism that he talks about, which is doing your best in whatever circumstances you're in.
Yeah.
So I think, and we run the Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit. And the theme is based on what Mandela said, which is, I'm an optimist. I don't know whether it's nature or nurture. I just know it's keeping my face to the sun and one foot stepping in front of the other. So it sounds like you just naturally, as a teenager, knew that things would work out.
Yeah, I did. And I had enough positive experiences or opportunities within all, like I had happy moments that I could hold on to or look forward to. And that certainly, helped keep me going. And there were things that I was able to enjoy. It's so different than it is today. Like once school was out, I could go home and, and I didn't hide in my room, but I could do the things that I wanted to do and explore my hobbies and interests. And, it's not the way things are now with kids and teenagers with social media and that just regular text communication if they've got phones. So yes, I think that is a good observation.
So, we've come together because we are both superpowers of joy. And
yes.
I always think that optimists feel more joyful. And I'm sure that empathetic people feel more joyful, experience more moments of joy. So what makes you feel optimistic? What are the experiences in your day-to-day, in your week-to-week, in your work and your home life?
I mean, it can be those small moments. It can be a small moment of, interacting with the cashier at the supermarket. And instead of just making it transactional, hey, how's your day going? And I was there a few weeks ago and had never met this cashier before. I started talking to her. It was first thing in the morning, and she explained to me how she was on phase 1 of her day. And phase 1 ran until lunch. So that was phase 2, when her lunch break. And then phase 3 was her afternoon shift. And then she'd go home and have phase 4, which was being with her daughter. And it was just a fun conversation. And why not hear about what somebody's day is and what they're looking forward to? And that just, it makes you happy, like, to connect to with other people and hear a little bit about them and what's going on, whether it's good news or bad news. Just that human connection, I think, is so critical. So on a small scale, it's that. And I actually was just back at that supermarket this weekend, and she happened to be working. And so I got in line, and it was like, so which phase are we on right now? And she laughed and remembered talking to me. And we were able to kind of continue the conversation. That's a really nice, little tiny moment that took 2 minutes. But just that you're making those connections. We're each seeing and hearing each other. We're recognizing each other. We're having empathy, cognitive empathy, at least, with each other. And so that helps. Watching more positive kind of TV shows, or really just managing how we're interacting with, news and then media in general. There was a show we were starting to watch that a friend had recommended. It was on through Amazon Prime. And it was pretty graphic and pretty intense. And I was okay with it. My husband, though, decided, like, no, I don't want to watch that. I don't need this. And I have found that, for myself, like, I cannot watch horror films because I just don't want that energy and those images. Like, I just don't want that in my life. And I think that does also contribute to my own positive outlook, because I'm not dwelling on, oh God, or, all those other things. During times of political crisis, if you would, or, it's so funny when you talk to people that are Republican. So I'm just telling you that I'm not. But when you talk to people that are Republican, like, for them, some of them, the Trump years weren't so bad. For some, it was bad. And then if you're a Democrat or on the left, like, oh my God, the sky was falling. It was really, and that's even an understatement. We were very concerned. So you end up, regardless of which side, some Republicans will tell you, oh, the Obama years were awful, where we were like, that was like, amazing nirvana in a lot of ways. So when you talk to people or think about that, when you're faced with that and you're in that environment that goes against kind of what you want, so a government that's opposite, the news ends up being kind of a lot of doom and gloom for what, based on your alignment. And so we've had to, like, contain, and I try to contain my news consumption. I read the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal, like, every day. I'm always looking through it. I'm a news junkie, but I don't leave it on during the day, or I really control it. And we really, during the height of the pandemic, just found, like, it was too overwhelming. And so it was like 30 minutes, World News Tonight on ABC. We'll watch that, get the news, and be, go on with it. And then I can, like, read stuff whenever, because you don't need that feeding your brain. So I guess that's in kind of like day-to-day life. Because I'm an Enneagram 7, like with work, I try not to dwell on, like, so we're in a consulting business at Ignite 360. It's marketing research, and you win projects and you lose projects. And just today, we lost a pretty good sized project and had a quick online, we're a virtual company, so we're all dispersed, but I was having a quick G-chat with my colleague who put the proposal together, and we were hindsighting, like, oh, maybe we should have dialed this up or that up. And it's like, it's okay, we've learned, let's, like, move on. Let's not dwell on oh, we would have been the best, or the lost revenue, or whatever the thing was. Let's not get hung up on that. And a couple hours later, we ended up winning a really big project, that was even bigger than the one that we lost. So, like, hooray. And back into optimism, and that all feels good.
It's reflecting. One of the things we teach people, and we've done it in prison and hospitals. In Australia, the typical greeting is "G'day, how are you?" And the typical response is "not bad" or "not too bad." And so it's a nothing greeting. Whereas when we've intervened and we've got people to replace it with exactly what you asked the cashier, what's been the best thing in your day? 80% of people will give you a little story.
Yeah.
And it just improves your day. And I still remember, because when I first started teaching it, we were wearing masks in Melbourne. And when I took the mask off and came into the supermarket, this guy said to me, he said, "You're the one that told me to change my greeting." I looked at him and smiled. He said, "Oh, look, I don't have time to listen to all those good stories." It was just this lovely piece of Australian backhand humor.
That's awesome.
It had worked for him.
Well, and it's true. Instead of going through with a perfunctory, and you're going to get a perfunctory answer back, like, ask, like, what's been the best part of your day so far? I
And
like
people like it. And what happens to me now, of course, is people throw it at me first.
that. So you just always have that on hand. Are you watching for, like, is this one of the best moments of my day? Should I
Look, no,
share
I
that?
think but the funny thing from our sort of combination engagement with Andrew Cannon and the art and science of joy is that I'm actually more conscious that my positivity and my looking for the positive, I do experience more joy during the day.
Yeah.
And it can be as simple as, like outside my house, there's this little urban forest way in the middle of the road. And yesterday I was walking along and there was this beautiful, beautiful parrot, with a yellow chest and coloring and just above me. You just stand there for a few minutes and just gobsmacked by the beauty.
Yeah. Well, and it is all about how you choose to look at things. And I was with Andrew at an insights industry conference a couple weeks ago in Austin, Texas, and we were talking about that choice that you make, like the cognitive choice you make to be joyful or not. And you can actually, this is about how you look at things, and are you able to, like, turn things around. One of the chapters in my book is about turning it around and changing perspective and how you choose to look at something. Shortly before we got on this call, I was looking out the window, and it's actually it rained a little bit in San Francisco. It's June. That never happens. So that's a little weird. But I noticed I'm having an ongoing battle with some mushrooms, some stink mushrooms in my backyard. And I had dug up a bunch of them over the weekend. And, like, it was like we put the compost can out a day early just because it smelled so horrible. So it's whatever. It's one of those things. And then I just noticed there's another one that's now popped up. I was just like, oh gosh, there it is. And I could get angry or upset or something, and instead you just choose to laugh about it. And it's like, oh, and so I read up on it. There are flies that it attracts because it smells so bad. That's how it spreads the spores for the next sort of set of mushrooms. And yet also looks kind of like a character out of The Last of Us, and this very sort of sci-fi, like, weird thing. And, like, it just let my brain go there, and it's all like, it's just fun.
It's fun. It's fun. So what is the connection between empathy and optimism?
Okay, so empathy and optimism. This is the thing. If you're taking the time to have empathy, I think, with somebody and then utilizing it, it's lightening kind of the load that you're carrying. So you're going to be able to have more positive outcomes with people. And the positive, I think, feels lighter than the negative, which weighs you down and you can ruminate on. So by having empathy, you're trying to see other people's point of view. You're going to have more positive engagements with them, get to better resolution if you're having a conflict or whatever. That in turn, it clears a lot of things out of the way. so that you can actually just feel better and I think be more optimistic.
That is a beautiful answer. I think we'll bottle that one. So you're the CEO of Ignite 360. So it's
Yes.
a consumer insight and strategy firm helping brands identify and understand emerging macro trends and customer sentiments. And yesterday I read an article that described pessimism in the world as a tsunami. I have described it as a fog. The senior minister in Singapore thinks it is the biggest public policy issue in the world, the collapse of optimism in the developed world. So what are the trends you're seeing at Ignite 360 on optimism and empathy?
Wow. Yeah. I need to go free a cat from a bathroom,
Of
which is
course.
like 10 steps away. So let me do that.
So now come back.
Okay, we're back
So
to the
what are you
fog and
seeing around optimism and empathy in San Francisco, in America, in the world?
Yeah, so we've been running a study since April of 2020 to follow American kind of views and feelings and things. How people were, originally started like, hey, how are people coping with this pandemic that's going to keep us indoors for 3 months, and has lasted for a couple of years, and now all the other things that are going on. And I would say the pessimism and optimism, I guess they are tied to how things are going in your life and how things are going broadly. So there are elements of control that people are looking for. And right now, I think we've had a lot of feeling of out of control, whether it's because your party isn't in office or there's just all of this constant back and forth that's happening. But then inflation has been crazy over here. There's a war in Europe that we're just all worried like is one button push away from being nuclear. And, so many of us grew up with that fear from the Cold War. All the LGBTQ rights, as a gay man, that's really, really bothersome. Bothersome isn't even the right word. It's upsetting. It's disturbing. And so there's a lot of stuff that's happening, but I think where people still find joy, and from the respondents we talk to, it's still like finding the joy in your day-to-day life. And what are those everyday moments of joy that you can find, whether it's you like to bake and so you're baking, or you're having getting together with friends and people that you trust. And I think joy is a conduit to optimism is a conduit to joy. I think those two things are kind of linked. I like to believe that we are naturally optimistic as a species. I don't know how we could function kind of with not being that way collectively. I'm just totally, this is an observation on my part. So yeah, fog of pessimism. I mean, there's so many things, the things that have dampened empathy skills, dampen our sense of optimism as well. The wormhole of social media that people get lost down into, and the negativity that can be there, or the stress and the anxiety, the lack of social interaction and experiences with people, in the way that we're hanging out. I think all of those things combined together. You turn on the news, where we are in a point in our history as a society, as a race of humans, where we're in this sort of zero-sum game, winner takes all is kind of the mentality. And so it can be very hard to be, I think, optimistic, because you're not necessarily seeing the good in others, which I think you need to be able to do in order to get to a place of optimism or turn that around. And that's where empathy comes in, and all those little conversations, and what was the best part of your day questions, and having those engagements. So we have to make a choice. What I do think, though, that we don't appreciate right now is there is a vocal, visible minority that's kind of ruining it for everybody else. You know, if you think about like something we've noticed here, I don't know if you see it down in Australia, but there are people that drive like they're in Grand Theft Auto and swerving in and out of all the traffic and everything. That's one driver that's stressing out how many cars do they pass. And I think that's the sort of analogy for what happens. It's like one person posting something on social media that gets picked up by the right people, and all of a sudden you've got, you know, Target pulling LGBTQ products out of the stores, Bud Light laying off executives, all the things that are going on. And then that just creates even more sort of pandemonium and potentially pessimism. So
Yeah.
we have to work even harder at making that choice to be optimistic or find those things that puts optimism and joy into our day.
Yeah, it's interesting. In our research, so we've got probably 20,000 answers now. Almost no one, when you say what makes you optimistic, almost no one mentions the government. It's less than 1%. No one mentions the Prime Minister or the President. No one mentions the boss or work. So personal optimism tends to come from quite different spaces. But when you then ask people, are you optimistic about the country? Or are you optimistic about the world? Then the wheels fall off. And particularly for teenagers, their optimism for the country and the world is at rock bottom. Because as you've said, when you and I were young, it was only nuclear war. Now they've got existential threat of climate change. And over the last 4 weeks, all of a sudden, we've got existential threat of AI. So, you know, the kids are not all right.
No, the poor kids. No, they're not. I do feel sorry.
We only had to worry about, you know, sort of Richard Nixon and Brezhnev.
Well, we only had to worry about the threat of the planet being like annihilated by ourselves. And I don't know, maybe that feels different. Maybe it felt like we were a little bit more, I don't know. I think we've been in control around climate change. We broadly have chosen not to do enough about it. But it was out of your and my control. Like I didn't have a conduit to Nixon or Reagan or Gorbachev or any of them. And I'm presuming you didn't either, generally. So we couldn't like go talk sense into that. Like it was just truly like out of our control. With climate change, and it's, you know, kind of that man-made climate change, man-made it, like we've done it, and we're all guilty of it. We have all used too many, whether it's plastic bottles that are now floating in the ocean, gasoline, energy that's now causing holes in the ozone and raising the, you know, temperature of the planet, that's causing all the ice to melt. Like we've all been guilty of something, and yet no matter how hard you try, like it doesn't seem to, like the people that are in charge, the boomers, are so not listening, enough of them to actually do something about it.
Although you've got to look on the other side. I mean, you've actually had global energy carbon output reduced over the last 2 years. And 90% of new energy installation is renewable.
Yes.
So I'm on the board of Yarra Valley Water, which is the Financial Times ranked as the world's best climate water utility.
Oh, that's awesome.
We're actually going to reach zero carbon by maybe next year or 2025. And
Really
it's
cool.
just clever stuff. Waste to energy, sensible use of solar, energy conservation. We're going to build a second waste to energy plant. We're building a pilot green hydrogen plant. So the ultimate in green hydrogen, waste to energy electricity, recycled water.
Oh, nice. Yeah, the thing that Yeah, so it is this existential crisis that the planet is like, just heating up, and we can't talk to the planet the way I could go talk to the Russians in theory. And so it's so the consumers we've talked to in the past on studies, it's like, I'm one person, what can I do? It's just so huge.
I did a LinkedIn post yesterday. I said that start today, just stop buying plastic bottled water.
Let me hide mine.
Uh,
Yeah.
we produce, so we do practical stuff at Yarra Valley Water. So we produce, low cost bottles that we can hand out to people. There are refillable water facilities in public parks on the waterfront.
Oh, nice.
We have restaurants that have little signs that say we are a refiller. So you can walk in and just refill your bottle with chilled water. So we try and make it as easy as possible for the person to drink tap water. Now, we're lucky in Melbourne that the tap water comes from the mountains. It's got almost no filtering, very little chlorine. So it's pure water. Obviously, if you're living in Yemen or Somalia, it's probably a bit tougher.
Right.
Although they're probably drinking more tap water.
Well, yeah, exactly. And they probably need the clean bottled water. And I will say, because I don't want the recycle police to come after me or anything, I do refill my water bottle probably more than I should. And then I'm like, oh, it's getting a little squishy, I should like get rid of it and recycle it. And then, because the San Francisco is great about it, but I still do have bottled water.
My greatest irritation in San
Tuscany.
Francisco was I don't believe in takeaway coffee. I think if I'm going to pay $5 for a cup of coffee, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to look at a person and talk to them over coffee. But I always found that the most dangerous people in California were people carrying 1 liter cups of coffee hand out in front of them. I reckon that was more dangerous than gun-toting people.
In San Francisco, probably. In other parts, the gun toters might be outnumbering, it seems. Yeah.
But last question for you. Question for you. Who have been the positive leaders who've inspired you? Your bosses, your colleagues, family and friends. Who are the people when you say, that's one of the people that helped shape me to be the good person I am?
I've been really fortunate. I think I have to give tribute to my parents for helping me look at things a different way. Did a lot to help instill or develop my empathy muscle when I was young. And then as I started working, even high school jobs, I started getting like office jobs because I could type, I was good on the phone, and I could file things back when all of that was important. And I had bosses that just had a really positive outlook on things. And, I had an internship at CNN and in London when I was studying over there, and one of the producers there was a British woman, and she was just like, just introduced me to the phrase, don't get your knickers in a twist, which I loved and still use to this day, and believe that, yeah, like, why bother? Don't get your knickers in a twist. And had some other bosses during college years. I had an office job at the American Psychological Association during the summer in their convention office. And we were working, psychologists are not people you want to do customer service for. They can, I love them, but if they didn't get their hotel reservation, they got cranky. But the director of the conventions at the time and the other manager I was working with just had a good sense of humor about it, and helped me understand how to laugh it off and not take it so personally. We try to resolve the person's issue, and now let's talk about something else that's going to either make us happy or have a laugh about the inanity of what was going on. So throughout, I've had a lot of bosses. So that was Candy and Nadi at APA. There's a guy at HBO that I worked for years ago, Russell Schwartz, who I think just always had a positive outlook on things, and that rubbed off on me. And I think at that point, like it's kind of formed. Had some friends that were very optimistic and positive, kind of lights that also helped.
Well, thank you so much, Rob. It's morning here, it's evening there. You have lifted my entire day.
Oh, well, thank you. This has been one of the best parts of my day. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Look forward to more.